Hi, and welcome to our Jim2 webinar on incoming email. A common thing I hear when I talk to customers is that they don't know what they don't know. And as such, we'll be going right back to basics for each topic to make sure that you're all fully informed about each section. The webinar will be uploaded to our website so you can rewatch if you wanted to go over something again. Or you can let someone know that's not on today so they can see the info also. At the end of the session, we'll have a Q&A in which you can ask any question you like. There is a new Q&A feature that you can find at the top of the screen. We'll check the normal chat as well, but if you wanted to ask a question to be answered at the end of the webinar, please use the Q&A section. I will also mention that this will be the last webinar for 2022, but that we will be continuing the webinars starting in February 2023. So, let's start on today's topic, Jim2 and inbound email. Last webinar, we talked about outgoing emails and how they can help you save time having pre-prepared responses in templates and how you can set up Jim2 to use templates automatically. If you haven't seen the video yet, you can find it on our website in the Learning Resources section. Today, however, we will be looking at how we can best use emails coming into our business to help keep our jobs and projects on track. There are two main words that come to mind when thinking of incoming email in Jim2. They are organization and visibility. On one hand, we want to see when a new email comes in, and we want to make sure that it's recorded against the correct Jim2 object. On the other hand, we want to know that our emails are organized in such a way that it enables us to find them easily later. There are some email elements that will help us do this. Tag emails, email folders, email lists, and email rules. By using these elements in combination with each other, we can create a high level of visibility and organization for any incoming email communications. Before we get too far into the webinar, I'll first point out that you may or may not have incoming emails enabled already. This may already be turned on, depending on what your choices were at the time of your implementation. But if it isn't, you can find the options in Tools, Options, and then in the other section, Email. The very first option will allow you to receive emails into Jim2, and the next will allow you to choose the polling period. The polling period is the number of minutes that will elapse between each time Jim2 will check your email accounts for new emails. I will say at this point, if you're unsure of any parts of the incoming email setup process, give our support team a call to help you through it. It can be just a little complicated to set up incoming emails, but we are always here to help. I'll also let you know that it's important to understand that every email that's coming into Jim2 will go through the system inbox. This is a system folder and cannot be changed. No matter how many email addresses you have set up in Jim2, every email will come through the system inbox. This means that if you have emails coming in for your sales at email address, it will be the same inbox as the emails coming into the accounts at email address, where Jim2 is concerned. Great for visibility, but not so great for organization or security. And actually, also not best practice to only have emails coming into the system inbox. The solution to this is to create folders. As a concept, folders are fairly straightforward. They allow us to keep emails organized by using the email address. Sales emails in the sales folder, accounts emails in the accounts folder. And further to this, we can add tags, which adds another level to our organizational structure. There are two kinds of tags available in Jim2. An email tag will allow you to view an email in different email folders, and an object tag will allow you to see the email on various Jim2 objects. Think about folders as being where email is organized via the email tag, and object tags as being windows that you can open from any object in Jim2 to be able to see those emails. In essence, email tags should define the contents of a folder, and in turn, we should set up email rules to automatically tag emails into the correct folder. To set these up, we go to Tools and then Setups. We must look for the email section, which has three sections: email accounts, email tags, and email folders. Your email accounts will generally already be set up as part of the implementation process. However, if you don't have any set up, or if you don't have all the email addresses set up in Jim2 that you'd like to have set up, please get in touch with our support team. Tags are very straightforward to create, as it only requires a single field. I'd recommend that you create email folders and email tags that are in line with the departments in your business. By having tags for sales, accounts, service, or any other parts of your business, you can ensure that those parts will be able to see the emails that they're better equipped to handle. Next, I'll quickly mention object tags. Object tags refer to objects within Jim2. By objects, I mean jobs, quotes, projects, etc. By using object tags, we can have a single email apply to multiple folders and multiple objects. For example, if a customer sends in an email requesting that their invoice be checked, while also asking to buy a new product, you can tag that email to both the accounts and sales email folders. And you can also tag it to an object, so it can appear in the comments grid on a job or quote or project or all three. This raises a good point as well. When we're working with an email that's being accessed through multiple objects, it's important to remember that there's still only one email in Jim2. You're only accessing that single email from multiple points in Jim2. The upshot is that if you are marking an email as read, then you're actually marking it as read on multiple objects. Next in the list is the email folders. There are 6 system folders that cannot be changed in any way. You'll recognize them easily as they have a gray background, whereas the custom folders you create will have a white or bluish tinge background. By creating custom folders, you're then able to add pieces of automation when you receive an email into that folder. For example, we can specify that if an email arrives via the support email address, we can apply the support tag to it, which will make it visible in the support folder. Here, we can see the setup of an email folder. The options available in here are not settings as much as they are filters. The filters should be set so that you have visibility you need on the folder you're creating. Generally speaking though, you'll only need to add a folder name and a tag for that folder. And the other settings won't really need to be touched. Let our support team know if you'd like more info on these other settings though. So, now that we know a little bit more about email, how emails are stored and accessed in Jim2, let's take a look at how our users can access those emails and easily associate an email with different objects. First, we must set who can see which email folder. If we go to the Email tab, we can click on Email security. In this window, we can first set how we wish to apply the security via the drop-down in the top left. I will choose to set this up by email folder, but you can do it by user as well. Next, we'll need to choose which email folder we wish to apply the security to. The drop-down in the top right will allow us to do this. After choosing the folder, you'll see who already has access to a folder on the right-hand side of the window, with the left showing who is not yet given access. To give or remove access, all you need to do is click Edit, select a name or security group that you would like to give access or remove, and then click the left or right arrow to add or remove them. You can also use the double arrows in each direction to add or remove all the users that are currently set. Now that we have the security of the folder set, let's take a look at email lists. I would highly recommend that you set up email lists in line with your email addresses and folders. By this, I mean that you should set up a support list if you have a support at email address, or a sales list if you have a sales at email address. You can choose the folder you wish to show in the first drop down in the top left. I would then recommend that you set up a date range that you'd like to see. Depending on how often you check the emails will determine the length of time to set your dates. I personally like to keep visibility for today or this week or just a short amount of time, but you can set any time frame you wish. For now, we'll set to this year. In addition, you can set the list to filter based on the read status of your emails. By limiting the list to showing only unread emails, like so, you are effectively creating a list of emails that have not yet been actioned. This is great to keep on top of your communications and tracking what you've actioned and what you have not. Further to that, being able to mark your emails as read and unread can be a call to action on a job or quote as well. Be aware that an email will remain as unread unless you manually mark it as read using the right-click menu or the button in the ribbon menu. It will also be marked as read automatically when you reply to the email. When creating an email list for visibility on incoming emails, you won't really need to adjust the other options. Those options are there for when you wish to search for a particular email or emails from a single customer. The card field email will let you limit what shows to only the card code that you enter. And you can also use the status field to help find any emails that did not send for any reason. There are also advanced options accessed at the tab at the bottom of the screen. This adds a few fields that can help further narrow the list of emails. I'll draw your attention to the group tags, as you might want to use the tags that we were just creating to help build your list. Above that is the object tag too. This will let you narrow the list to only emails that are attached to the Jim2 object specified in this field. And of course, when we're creating a list that we want to keep around, we can give it a name at the bottom of the window, add a refresh timer, pin, and run to save. And of course, you can publish the list so that you can share the same list across all of your users. Ultimately, for incoming emails, however, you'll want to keep the filters as wide as possible to better capture all emails as they come in. To better help with visibility, I like to keep my email lists high in the navigation pane. For anyone unaware, you can click and drag the entry in the side panel to where it best suits you. I like it to be towards the top of my lists, however, so I can more easily see if there are new emails that have come in. An email list is slightly different from other lists, as the number next to the list will only show the number of unread emails rather than all the emails in the list. This means that you can see immediately if you've received any new emails by keeping an eye on the number next to the list. Okay, so now we have tags, folders, and lists that can help us organize and access our emails. Jim2 also has a way of automatically sorting emails, and this section is called Email Rules. Clicking on Email Rules will open a new window. This window will show you any and all rules that are currently created in the system, and the tick box to the left will show if they're active at the moment. On the right-hand side of the screen, we can see the up and down arrows. These are to change the rules order. This can be important as you may wish to have one particular rule executed before another. So by extension, this screen also doubles as the execution plan for email rules. Now, as we start to look at how to create an email rule, you'll notice how many options are available for many different scenarios. If we go through all of these options, each with an explanation, we'd be here for a very long time. So instead, I'll pick a few common scenarios that you may want an email rule for and show you how to build that. If you're curious about the other rules, you can have a look on Jim2 Help for more detailed instructions. And of course, you can always contact our support team. So let's click New. The first decision we have to make is the condition in which the rule will be used. As you can see, there are a number of entries here, but I'll call attention to a few of the more commonly used ones. Recipient contains will let you name an email account that the email may have been sent to. This is commonly used to direct emails to folders, just as we've been talking about. By using the email address, we can then direct the email to a particular folder by using the tag we choose in this rule. You may want to use subject contains if you'd like to set up an email import function from your Outlook. We use this in Happen as sometimes we get an email to our personal email accounts that we'd like to have accessible on a job from in Jim2. I will show you how to set that up towards the end of the webinar. Subject or message body contains can help you organize emails that might have a keyword that you're looking for. It may be a particular product or stock that you would like to monitor communications for. So you could set this with a product name and have any email with that stock mentioned automatically go to a particular location. And I'll also mention that if you do not choose a condition here, the rule we are creating will then apply to all emails that come in. One of the main uses of this feature is to have the first email rule in your set of rules identifying who the email has come from in relation to the contacts on your card files. Let's set up a few rules that are either common and or useful. To start with, we'll set up a rule that will add any emails sent to my support address to my support folder. We'll first start with recipient contains. We need to enter the support email address that I had up earlier, and then we click Next. We can either double click or highlight and then click Add, the entry called Add Group. And then we can use the drop down to select the group we'd like to add the emails to. I'll choose Support. Then we only need to give the rule a name. And we do have a couple other options here. You can make a determination if you wish to have the rule created as inactive, and you can choose to stop other rules from running once this rule has been run. Outside of that, you can click Finish, and that email rule is now in place. We can set this up in the same way for emails coming into our sales folder. Same process, but new rule. Recipient contains jim2sols@gmail.com. Add group, sales, sales test, and finish. And it's that easy. Next, let's see how we can set up an email rule to attach an email that we have forwarded from our personal email accounts and have it attached to a job. This will only work for the jobs object in Jim2, but I think you'll find it very useful. For this rule, we tick subject contains. And then we want to enter something that would not commonly be found in an email subject line. This can be anything, but it can be helpful to add something relatively short. I'll pop the tilde ##, as I don't think I've seen that combination of symbols before, and it's quite quick to input. Click Next, and then we'll choose Determine Job from Contents. Just a touch trickier here in that we need to tell Jim2 that when we see tilde ##, that it should check what is after that for a job number. We can do this by using the following expression, but don't feel like you need to memorize this. I will link our help file, which has the information at the end of the webinar. Oh, and we can edit these rules by double clicking in the bottom section. Make sure that we're only searching in the subject line. Click Next, and we can give it a name. Ad hoc email test. And then we can click Finish. And now, if an email comes into the system inbox, it will be checked for the tilde ##, and if it finds that, it will attempt to find a job number that the email can attach to. If I check in the system inbox list, we should be able to find an email that I asked a coworker to send in earlier. Looks like we've got a few. We can also see that that is automatically tagged to job 294. If Jim cannot find the number in the subject line, or if any rules fail to run, you can find that information at the bottom of the preview pane on the right-hand side of the screen. You'll notice that there are several tabs here to show different things. The House tab will give a basic overview of information that is found on the other tabs. We'll take another look at this one after we look at the others. Next, we have the blue tag. This will show what Jim2 objects this email is attached to. The orange or red tag will show which email tags have been associated with this email. You can add more than one tag for both email and object tags too. Then we have the Rules tab. This will show all the rules that have been attempted to run against this email and will show if they successfully completed or not. You can also rerun a rule by highlighting the one you wish to run and then clicking Run Action. Clicking Run Other will show you all the email rules that have been created, whether they apply to this email or not, to give you the opportunity to run any rules that may not have associated automatically. The next tab is a Summary tab. You can edit the information in here to suit, but it will auto-populate with the subject line and the start of the webinar, of the email, my apologies. And finally, we have the Contacts tab. If you did not have the email address that this email came from associated with a contact, you can use this tab to find and attach the correct contact, or even add a new one too. Back on the Summary tab, and we can see a few pieces of information. The first is if the email is linked to a customer. You can click Change to manually adjust this. We can see how many rules were not able to run against the email. You can click Fix to go directly to the Email tab. I will mention if it's only one rule that has not been able to run, you'll get the option to run here as well. We can also see the tags that have been applied. The View Edit button will take you to their respective tabs, but if you have an object tag, you can go straight to the object by clicking it in this area. Looking back at the email list, we can also find a few helpful options, in particular from the right-click menu. Of course, we'll all be familiar with markers red, but did you know that in 4.4, we can now show who marked an email as read or unread and when? By looking at the tag summary area underneath the email preview, we can see two entries, one for when the email was marked as read and another to show when the email was marked as unread. This can be quite handy for auditing purposes, but it is important to remember that these fields refer to the user that's logged in, not necessarily the flesh and blood individual that may have clicked the buttons. We can also create objects directly from the right-click menu. In the section labeled Create, you can create a job, quote, purchase and expense orders directly from the email list. If you have rules that find the card file for that email, that information will automatically populate when the object is created too. There is also the ability to handle tags and folders from the right-click menu also. We can export the data or export the grid. The main difference between these two options is simply how it will appear in the spreadsheet after exporting. And I would be remiss if I didn't also highlight the Find panel. This will only search in the subject lines, but if you remember from last webinar, I was able to show you how to search the body of an email from a Jim2 object. So, as a final thought, I wanted to show you how we can use an incoming email to start a Jim2 workflow that goes from initial email to completed sale. First, I'll choose one of the emails that came in. With this email, I'll first check if it's associated with a card file. No, not yet, but we can link it with change. I happen to know that this contact is associated with the webinar's friend, Blonky Magoo. So I'll find Blonky in the list and click OK to associate the email. Next, I'll right-click and create a quote. One second. Let's try that again. There we go. I may have needed to refresh there, but as you can see, Blonky has been added as a customer. We can add him to the From and Ship by clicking in one of those fields. We can add a reference, and we can also add an item. Blonky was only asking for a price on a new carton, so we'll add the stock code to the quote as well. I'll click Save to ensure that the information is kept correctly, and it just so happens that Blonky's called up and accepted the quote. So I click Edit change the quote to accepted and save again. And then I can click Create Job. I can choose what to include, but I don't need to change anything here. So I click OK, and the job is created. All information from the quote has been carried over, and this includes the header information as well as the stock. I happen to know though that I don't have any of this stock on hand. So we can then do a right click and auto create purchase order. I can click run on this screen to show what needs to be ordered from this job. I can ensure that order and link to PO are ticked and then select order. After, I select a vendor. So now we have the order created, we can change that to ordered so that we know that this is on its way. And then when the stock comes in, we can receive it. To receive, we change the status to received and then update how many stock we did receive. Oop, including a date. So now that we have our stock, we can go back to our job set supply to 1 and then set the job to finish because Blonky's come in to grab his carton. And from here, we simply invoice and take payment. Well, we sure have covered a lot today. We covered how to organize emails, how to create automated processes for incoming emails, making effective email lists, and knowing what you've actioned and what is yet to action. By setting up a good foundation of these elements, you'll be more able to use your incoming email addresses as the start of your business workflows or even to help continue them. I recommend that you use all this information to ensure that your communications are as visible and organized as possible. Finally, I'd like to thank you all for attending today. I'll add a link to our survey webinar in chat, and I'll leave some information on screen about how you can get in touch with us. I'll also add some links to the chat about what we've talked about today. Now I'll introduce Steve, who can answer any questions you might have about email.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Ash. That was fantastic. It was a lot,
Thank you.
to cover.
It was a lot. Yeah, it was a big one.
So I'm just looking through some of the questions. Can you offer some junk clearing tips? Yes, I'll start with that one. So I guess one of the options is, and we do it, is we make sure that first of all, our upstream email server is configured to tighten up on email junk. So obviously you've got to be careful because you don't want to miss emails, but if you're using Office 365, which predominantly most of our clients are, there's some really nice spam filtering, which will pretty much make sure only things that should go to spam do. So they won't make them into Jim. Those that are persistent, you can create some rules to move those things in, purge them out into deleted, which is one of the standard rules. So it is really something that's handled at the server end, but certainly, yeah, we have had times where we've created some junk rules as well, just to get rid of stuff that manages to make it through on a persistent basis. So. Okay, are emails saved in backups? Yes, they are. They're in what's called our doc database. We have some email archiving functionality to keep the size of that database down. Can't go into that now, but there's some good help files on that. I think it's actually a good area that we could improve on in time as well, but certainly it does help keep that document database down, and it is backed up every night, hopefully, if you're doing backups. And just on that point, I think it's worth noting that when you're doing your backups, one of the things that people tend to do is ignore the ability to upload those backups to Azure and get really cheap storage. And whilst I know all of you have good IT people and they would be doing backups, we have had situations where things have gone awry, particularly this year with crypto viruses and other things. And just simply having a really cheap account and storing those backups overnight in Azure would have helped a lot for a lot of clients. It's automated, it's quick, everyone's got good internet access these days, it's cheap, and it's a guaranteed offsite version of your accounting and document database every night. So really, really can't impress upon you the importance of something like that, just to give yourself some backup to your backup plans. All right, so let's go back to the top. So the email will only work for job tags and no others such as quote. I have a belief that the quote rule's not far away. So at the moment is primarily job and also PO. So there's some more rules coming along. So keep an eye out for those. And the help guide is up to date with anything that's there now. And also just on that note, if you go to the help, you'll also see the what's new page, which gives you a good indication of what's being released and all the new functionality that's been rolling out this year, and a build list as well, which tells you what's been, what build includes what. So that's also worth a look at. Okay, jobs and tags. Just make sure I haven't missed anything here. When a quote is generated from the email, can an item number such as sale be default?
I know we can set the item as
Just
default, but I'm not sure if we can do it specifically from a right-click create.
I see you're saying when we right-click a quote from an
to
email.
create it, yeah.
You know what? I'll have to check that. We'll come back to you on that one, Rob. I'll have to double check myself.
Great question. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is some defaults in there that should pick up, so we can check options. I'd love to think that I know everything about Jim, but clearly that's almost impossible with so much functionality. So we'll double check that one and we'll come back to you via the support channel. And could we use the email rule job in the subject or PO in the subject? Job in the subject or PO instead of tilde hash hash. Trent, tilde hash hash was really an example. It can be whatever you want it to be as far as a subject rule goes. I might not be completely understanding that question. There's a job creation rule. So there's a few different rules. What I'd say is flick us an email or we'll contact you and we'll just double check exactly what you're asking us there and we'll come back to you properly.
I think maybe he's asking if you could replace tilde hash hash with the word job in capitals, and would it recognize?
Yeah. Okay. Yes, you could.
Confirmed. Yep.
I guess the reason we use tilde hash hash is because we communicate with so many different external systems, and a lot of them have their own like ticketing systems that we're dealing with other IT companies on our clients' behalf. There's a whole bunch of stuff that ends up in those subjects, and so what we're trying to do is avoid incorrectly processing if we can. But yeah, sure, you could try job and really whatever works for you. J colon and the number. Whatever works that's nice and quick, easy for you to type, that can be put in a rule that predominantly wouldn't come through in a normal email.
I think that's the key, is make sure that it's not something that someone would randomly send you, because then the email rules will try and enact on it, and it may end up with a missed email.
Yeah. Just on the backup again, yeah, so what I was talking about was Azure, Microsoft Azure. We have I don't know if have you got a Jim2 console session you could share by any chance, Ash? I can just quickly show everyone where that is. If you don't, we can.
I don't actually know.
That's okay.
You could take over the share if you like, though.
I don't have it open either. So on the backup tab where you configure the backup for Jim2, there is an upload option there. There's FTP, which is the older one. Azure is the more up-to-date version, pushes it up to very cheap storage. So if you need any help with that, just let us know. Just while you've got that open there, Ash, I wanted to mention one thing, and we might have covered it before, but if you could just go back to one of those emails that we had open or that was sent through to you, just before I forget. So just double click on mine that I sent to you down the bottom there. So one of the things that is really important if you're going to use Jim email is the recognition of who that customer is when it comes in, and that's generally pretty easy. Obviously, we're using a Gmail, so that's probably not as appropriate, but under normal circumstances, either the customer's email domain, in this case gmail.com, but happen.biz, for example, jim2.com.au, we can use a standard rule to identify that belongs to a given card file. But at the same time, one of the really nice things is being able to add contacts to your database as you go. So an email arrives. In this instance, you can see test customer. That's the word. Oops, go back there for me, Ash. Just go back to test customer. Yep, and just hit change for me. Just where it says test. So you'll notice one of the options there says add contact. So let's say you knew who that was. You can select it. Yep. And hit OK. Now, just before you hit OK, notice Ash had highlighted ABEC in his list. So that's going to add that contact to ABEC. So obviously, if you didn't want it to be ABEC, if it was some other company, you'd select the right company, then click add exactly, and go through. So really, really important, I think, particularly if you're using Jim and some of our nice email functionality for marketing. Great if you're using Jim for our ticketing environment. So the more of your contacts that you can have in Jim, the better. And that just helps you auto populate that. It's like a nice, easy, lazy way to do it. So I thought it was worth pointing that one out.
There was
Okay.
a follow-up from Rob earlier. So I think he wanted to also see, is it possible to set the item number as sale as a default from quotes?
Okay, I think that's the one we were going to double check. Let me just check one thing here for you. 1 second. Just going to jump into my Jim. Just bear with me a moment. Yeah, no. Look, I don't think there is, but I will triple check it with the sales team who use quotes regularly and just make sure I haven't missed something there. So you're right. There is a default that we can configure for job, but there's not a default that we can configure for quote that I can see quickly anyway. When you right click and quote, can you have the attention on a quote to be the contact that was matched on the email? Love the idea. It is a great idea, and we might make sure that one gets pushed through to our user voice. So that's basically to populate that attention on the far right there. The issue there, Jeff, is that attention drop down is not the already created contacts. So it's probably a little bit more involved. And what I would say to you is, at the very least, if you add the contact on the way through, at least then it will show there in that drop down for you to select. What happens if the contact appears in multiple card files, example, when multiple sites? Yep, that can be an issue. So if Jim's unable to determine because of a duplicate, you'll see that and you'll have to go ahead and decide which one you're going to add it to. Yep.
It would appear as an outstanding rule.
Yep. Yep. So if Jim can't make a determination, it's not going to tag it to the wrong thing. It's going to try. Well, obviously, we're trying to avoid that. So yes, that is a situation that comes up from time to time. And again, that's if you're using email. If you're using client domain as your primary rule, so the first rule that it hits, that's probably, again, that's assuming you've got a www entry on the card code. That would probably alleviate that problem. Presumably, you're not going to have that same web address on both those card codes. So that may be a tip for you there, Dan. It will assign it, sorry, Hamish, it will assign the email. So the question is, if an email is addressed to A and B and two email rules are set for each address, does it only assign the email to the list that comes first in the rule order and not the second? No, the answer is it will, as long as you haven't created a stop processing rule. So normally speaking, in fact, Ash, all of those first rules there that say default, add support tag, add sales tag, etc., they would run without a stop, and so they would continue to be processed and tagged to both those folders. And then at some point, they'll get to a rule, or finish processing all the available rules, or one that says stop processing now. And there's a bunch of reasons why you would want to have stop processing now rules. And generally speaking, if you just hit cancel for me, Ash, if you, as Ash mentioned, you can move, the rules, they all fire in order. So for example, if I wanted one of those, anyone, Ash, to fire directly after those tags, so just go down a bit further, just go to the ad hoc email attachment one or something, you can move it up in the order. So you might, for example, say, look, I've got a particular thing I'm looking for. I want to run through my identification tags, and then I want these stop rules to run. So it varies. Some people will put the stop rules up high, some will put them low. It really depends on the use case. But it is worth noting, you're basically saying, I just don't want it to process any further. So, but always let it identify as a rule, and then you've got a whole bunch of subsets underneath that you can decide on what happens next. So I hope that answers the question.
That actually raises a question from me, Steve.
Sure.
Is there a suggested order in terms of sort out card file first, tag second, job third sort of thing?
Yep. Yeah, my proposed best practice has always been, as a default, the first rule is always to identify. So if you double click on the default rule for me and just go next. Okay, so that's actually doing it from email. I would actually, as a rule, I would try and do an identification from website first. And so that goes back to remove that. And it goes back to what Dan was mentioning, is how do we make sure, that if there is double. So by having that first, again, you've got to have an entry in the card file. So if in a moment, if we go finish and just go and show everyone what that means, so just go to any random card file.
Yes. Oh, wait. Oh, well.
Yep, anyone's good.
Yep.
All good. So you'll see there, if we just edit that one, anything there's fine. So just in the drop down, change your phone to www. So what we're actually checking that value there. So we strip out the www, and anything after that first dot is what we're checking for in that rule. So if we find that, we will tag that as the customer. So that's the general rule. And I would also say best practice is generally to always have your identification tags first. And then it really does vary use case by use case. I mean, essentially what you're trying to do is make sure things are ordered in such a way that they're not preventing other important rules from running. And we do have clients with, a lot of rules and some with very few. So it really does depend. Okay, once a rule is created, it will run automatically on all emails in inbox, or can it force rules to run as you? No, so the email runs as it comes into Jim. So as it runs, as the emails comes through, it passes through the rules engine. And at that point, the only way you could run a rule again against a given is to actually go, well, in this case, let's just say run other. And just go and select, so use the determine from website, just as an example at the top, hit OK, and then you can highlight that rule and the bottom rule it always adds it to the bottom, and then you can say run action. And it'll tell you, and there you go, found card file happen for domain happen.biz. So that's so that's I'm assuming that's what you're handling, but no, it's not Outlook, no, so it doesn't have the same level of complexity. Well, it's actually very different to Outlook because obviously we're doing a whole bunch of other things here that are related to the ERP data. But yeah, it's one rule at a time, one email at a time as it comes through. And Dion's asked, if an email is received with a very large attachment, picture, etc., is there any way to manually remove just the attachment and leave the email and body in place without archiving? Yes. So in fact, that's a really, really good question, because part of archiving is exactly that. So when you're doing, if you start delving into email archiving rules, you'll notice there's a few different types of archiving. And one of them is specifically essentially to just remove the attachments. There's others that remove the content but leave the summary. So have a really good, so if you, let me just go down here. Yeah, There you go. Well, that's the actual condition. Above that, you'll see we've got action, and you've got archive email. That little drop down there, Ash. Yeah, so you've got delete. So delete is, it's gone. It's just gone. Okay, straight to deleted. Archive is an archiving rule. And then you've got message contents, archive the attachment, and so on and so forth. So there's a better explanation than I'm going to give you now for each one in the help file. But it's actually really important you do check that, because often people accidentally archive things they don't want. And then in addition to archiving, you've got by object and by report. So there's a bunch of nice rules there. And the archiving functionality, look, it does work really well. I mentioned earlier that we're looking to do some improvement next year. Mostly that's around retrieving those archived emails once you've archiving them and bring them back in, which is a little bit painful, to be honest. So. Okay, what have we got there? Hopefully that answers the question for Dion. Yeah, Dion, definitely go and have a good read of the archiving. And if you need any help on that, just fire off onto support, because it's something we deal with a lot. I think we've covered everything. I don't have any
I didn't see any in
extra
Q&A.
hints. Yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I guess is worth noting is on the rules and the email setups is that there's a couple of options when you're setting up your folders. In fact, maybe just go back to folders in the setups there, Ash, which is how we use it at Happen. And I think in some ways would be considered best practice. So if you just hit edit on that one. So you notice it says email tag support and email account is blank. And you'll notice it says generally left blank. And there's a reason for that. If Ash had have tagged that email to an actual email account that's been configured, we couldn't move that email virtually from support to sales, for example, okay, because it's locked to that account essentially. So best practice is, if you're reviewing your rules, have a look at that and consider the fact, for example, we have a lot of emails coming to support, but some of them really are a sales inquiry. So we can just go to the email, change the tag to sales, hit save, and it's done. It's moved that from the support queue to the sales queue, as an example. Whereas you wouldn't be able to do that if they're both locked to that email account. So again, that's explained in the help file, maybe better than I can. And we've got one more. Why is the rule assigned email access group when XX is a folder, not a group? I think that's a terminology thing. So
Well, I
go
think
ahead.
it should say assign email XX tag is probably the better explanation, because as I mentioned earlier, these settings are actually filters for what you're wanting to see in that folder, rather than it being settings to say only, allow these things in. So when you're assigning the tag, that means that as long as it matches up here, it's going to be visible in the folder.
Yeah.
A little bit odd.
Yeah, I think it's really just naming. Yeah. So
yeah.
Yeah, I think anyway, if we haven't explained that one properly, Cam, you know how to find me.
Can you view the emails you've assigned to a contact under their card file? I don't think it's possible in the current version.
Not in the current version, but a very, very popular request. So keep an eye out for that one. So you can search for emails by card file, I think, which Ash has already shown. But yes, it would be a nice one to be able to do. And we are looking to do some enhancements in that area very soon. So do you use rules to sort spam? Do you use junk account and tag addresses? We mentioned, I think this is sort of a follow-up similar to the earlier question. So generally speaking, look, there's two best practices when it comes to spam management. First of all, somebody in the organization, spam management's definitely managed at the server side. So generally speaking, Office 365 or Google Workplace, which is the two most widely used. 365 by far the most for our client base. And there's a whole bunch of very nice spam controls within that environment. So that prevents a lot of the email coming into Jim at all, which is obviously the preferred way. They also have online protection and antivirus at that level as well, which I'd highly recommend that you check that out if you're not, because there is some add-ons to enhance that are very cheap on a per user basis. And it is really a nice perimeter guard from stopping some of these viruses and probably as much as anything, phishing attempts arriving and getting people to click on the wrong thing. So it also gives you some ability to add warnings to those emails. So a lot of ours that come in to happen have a little message at the top saying, hey, you don't receive emails from this address very often. So it highlights it to you in the email header. So there's some nice things there. I think it's improving every day as far as helping with that in that regard. With that said, it is a good idea if somebody within Outlook has access to that shared mailbox and is monitoring that junk folder for things that could potentially have been prevented from coming into Jim that should have come into Jim. It is a balance. It's a very difficult balance for everyone. But obviously these days, phishing attempts and even probably not so many virus attachments make it through these days, but it's the links to dodgy things that look like, you know, asking you to change your email passwords and stuff like that we're all on the lookout for. So
I
and
think
you can make junk rules. Sorry, I should mention, yes, and you can create your own junk email rules for problematic ones, but you'll end up making a lot most likely. So
is it fair to say, Steve, that the rules to stop spam and junk mail is more targeted to particular emails that are making it through the previous
filters.
screens? Yeah,
through the filters. I mean, it's a difficult one, and of course they're all, you know, it's changing. It's like a moving target trying to deal with this for all of us. The best, I guess, the best strategy that we could relay to you is ensuring all staff are aware, that they're vigilant. We get together every month as a group, and security is on that topic discussion every month, talking about being vigilant, not clicking on links, asking somebody else if there's any questions, if it looks a little bit strange. It is worth having those discussions with your staff every month or very, very regularly. And if you really want to do some testing, there's some good tools out there, including within Office 365, that do pretend phishing attempts. So they send out a whole bunch of emails that look like they're being phished, and you can then get a report to see who clicked on them. So you can just have a chat and go, okay, so this looked real, but it wasn't, and you literally could have brought down the house. So, it is a tough one. What have we got there?
I think that's everything. No?
Contact on the email. How do you use rules to sort? Yep, that's it. Last
Well,
one.
thank you for all the questions. I hope we're able to fill in some blanks for you. Before we officially sign off, and as this is the last webinar of the year, I'd like to wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year on behalf of all of us here at Happen Business. I'd also like to thank you for your feedback and support over 2022, particularly in relation to these webinars. Thank you, everyone.